Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond the Barclay end of season review. As you can see, we've got some guests on today. First off, let's get that out of the way. We've introduced the gents. So, hi Rob, how are you?
I was just shutting my curtains because, I don't want
Right.
neighbours looking in on what I'm doing, talking to you wonderful men. They'll think, what's that? What's Rob Butler doing with all those men in his room? And I'll just be like, none of your business. Shutting my curtains. So here I am.
Fair enough.
Pleasure to be here, Jez. Thank you for inviting me.
No, not at all, and thanks for coming back on. So, and we've also got Connor Southwell from the Pinkun as well. Hi Connor.
Good evening. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good. Welcome to the Madhouse.
I'm glad to be here. Delighted. It's nice to see so many lovely faces on this evening, nice day for it as well. So all good.
It's been blinded today, hasn't it? I've been into London to go and renew my passport, so less said about that, the better. So we've also got a substitute in today from who helped us out on Sunday actually for the ladies' game. So I'm absolutely delighted to also introduce Reuben Clarke, who, as I say, helped us out. So Reuben, if you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
So I'm Reuben. I'm currently at University of Derby doing football journalism. I'm just about to finish my second year, and I've been basically up and down the Midlands the last few weeks, just working my socks off. Really, it's been non-stop, but it's been amazing.
Oh, good. You got any jobs going, Connor?
Yeah, you can have mine if you want. The way it's going at the moment. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's probably a good time to sort of jump into it. I mean, it's great. It's been a tough season, isn't it? Let's be honest. And we've had the managerial change that we all jumped on and talked about last week. We have lost Rob, by the way. I'm sure he'll jump back on when he can. I guess maybe that's a good place to start. I mean, we discussed it at length last week on our own podcast, but perhaps you'd like to just give your initial views on the sacking and how the club moved forward.
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? Because I think you looked at the run of games that they were on and defeats they were on, and typically in those type of runs of form, you get quite a angry response often to a head coach, and there are calls for them to go, and it doesn't feel particularly surprising. So for Norwich to be on a run of 1 win in 10, as it was post Millwall, and now 1 in 11 or slightly longer than that, and for there to be shocked that a manager is gone is almost quite a surprising position to be in. But I think it's indicative of where maybe the club had got themselves into. It felt like certainly people I was speaking to in the week leading up to it, I'm sure Rob's the same, and even fans and stuff, there was just kind of an acceptance that it was going to be Johannes Thorup here at the start of next season, and that was kind of accepted, and maybe the churn would come from within the players. So I think there was surprise even after that Millwall game, where actually a lot of the fury and anger was aimed at the squad rather than the coach, that decision was made. I think there's a few points for me. I'm still really intrigued by the timing of it, because I think even if you're not sure on Johannes Thorup with 2 games to go, there is an argument just to keep him in place and let him see out the season, and obviously maybe do what they did with David Wagner, which is once it takes its course, then you decide to pull the plug on it. Clearly that is an interesting one for me, because they didn't need a bounce, so to speak. They're not going to go down. They're not going to go up. It was always going to be about whereabouts in mid-table they finish. So it wasn't like they needed instant results in maybe a way like Cardiff did when they changed their manager. So that's one point. But also, I've probably just felt a little bit muddled about it, to be honest, because it felt very much like the messaging has kind of got a little bit mixed, I think, behind where maybe the club, where we thought the club was going in terms of long term and building a little bit of a project, buying young players. I think the average age of their signings last summer was 20, and trying to embed a style of play and trying to sort of build something over a period of time, which Johannes Thorup was hired obviously to oversee and to help that process. Clearly there were some bad results within that, and there were reasons, I think, why that sacking was made that you could agree with, and it's hard to argue against. But that being said, I think for that all then to be judged on short-term results feels quite contrasting and conflicting, and I think if I was probably a fan, I'd feel a little bit confused as to like, well, where are we? Is the next manager now going to have to get in the top 6, or they're gone, or are they building something, or because it feels like it's difficult to get a guy or person that can do both, and clearly that's the challenge. And I'm intrigued as to when those expectations shifted, because I remember speaking to Ben Napper in February, and it was very much like top 6 would be nice, but it's not the be all and end all, and then it seems like it has become the be all and end all. So a lot of mixed feelings and odd feelings, and probably they still exist at the moment. But I think certainly on the run of results, it's very difficult for any head coach to have a run like that and to have a reaction from a fan base like that towards players and expect to survive. I think at most clubs that just wouldn't be the case. So I'm not sure Johannes Thorup could have or would have really any arguments against maybe that decision.
Rob, you probably gathered we were talking about the Thorup sacking. What was your initial thoughts on that, and perhaps moving forward, what do you think this Norwich's long-term plan now, and where we're gonna be next season.
Yeah, I think the initial reaction was fairly shocked. I mean, nothing shocks me. Sacked Daniel Farker after winning at Brentford. We all remember that date. That was despite a lot of bad results in the Premier League. It's still quite shocking to kind of do it on the night that Norwich had a good away win against a good team. But yeah, I as Connor would have, we got the call, a few minutes before, and it was, I was a bit like, oh, blimey. And it kind of, I was expecting a nice quiet day, speaking to a friend of the show, Emmy, for the Eurovision Song Contest entry, was a Norwich fan, who I know you've had on, and it's absolute delight. So I just recorded that interview, and I was thinking, I'll just get that sorted out today. But yeah, everything changed, and obviously people will know we went in to do an emergency canary call and all that business, and Connor would have been very busy, and you boys would have been very busy talking to all your mates about it, what have you. So yeah, it was quite surprising. But when you sort of think about it, I think I don't know if it's the right decision, but it's a decision that you can understand. Lots of people in football that we've spoken to, and I know Connor will have as well. In certainly Chris Sutton, we always ring in when something big happens, and he was really surprised. We spoke to David Fox, who watched a lot of games with us, and he still works in football. He was surprised. But I think people out of football, or perhaps journalists, perhaps us fans and people like that, can probably understand why Ben Napper's made that change now, because we know, because we sit and watch Norwich every week, that they were on the slide. They were big time on the slide. They were heading towards the trapdoor. And honestly, if there was 5 more games this season, Norwich probably would have got relegated. I mean, Preston North End look like they might even get sucked in now, and they won't have spent a day in the relegation zone perhaps until they go down. So it can happen. No team is arrogant enough to think it's not going to happen. I feel sorry for Johannes as a person, because he's a great guy, really good with us, one of the best managers I've ever had the sort of pleasure to interview. Really honest, really good with the fans. Probably in many ways deserve more time, but that time is very precious in football, and he's just not got it. So I was surprised at the timing, but I can understand why they've done it. And going forward, I just don't know really. I think that Ben Napper's neck is on the block, because the next decision he makes is a very big one. They always are when you get a new manager in. David McNally always had a plan B. And one of his famous plan Bs was Chris Hughton, much maligned by Norwich fans, but you did keep him in the Premier League. And on the whole, there was some good results, there were some bad results. No one liked his football, but that was a good decision, really. Long term it didn't work out. Perhaps the decision with Neil Adams, who we love, obviously, it didn't quite work as well. Alex Neil comes in, the rest is history, does a brilliant job. So McNally was really good at kind of replacing. Whoever wasn't, I think that's fair to say. He got the great one in Farker, but this is huge for Napper, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does.
No, completely agree, and thanks for that. So I mean, sort of moving on to season sort of overview, really, and I'm gonna chuck this one across to AD. How would you sum up the season in a sentence, AD?
Disappointing.
Yeah, short and sweet. I think I would say inconsistent. I think we've had times of the season where it's looked quite good. Looking at the result against Watford at home, Hull at home, Plymouth at home. But you're right. It never gets followed up with any sort of run of form. And obviously, Cillian's our man that goes to every single game. And I think Cillian, you probably allude to that, would you? Or agree with that?
Yeah, no, it was a very disappointing season overall. I'm a little bit confused, and I'd be curious to hear what Rob and Connor in particular, any of you think. But is the issue the players or the coach? Looking at the Middlesbrough game, I know Middlesbrough weren't great attacking, but there's been so much talk about our leaky defence and how poor they were, and they were pretty good on Saturday. They didn't let any goals. I mean, is it all down to Johannes, or is there still a problem with some of our players?
Answer that before I lose connection again, and then I'll let Connor have a go. I genuinely think it is a lot down to the manager, and Coote's probably the best person to answer this because he's been in the dressing room. But I think when you look at what happened when we went down to League One, Colchester came and smashed us. That same team then walked the league. What was the difference? Paul Lambert and Ian Culverhouse. So, I mean, you need to have talented players, in my opinion, but you just need to have a manager and a coach to organise them. And I think Johannes had lots of ideas, lots of good messages that he put across. It just wasn't getting across. And for some reason, and there's certainly no hint from me that there was any kind of disrespect from the players. I don't think we got that feeling. But clearly they weren't playing well enough for him. That's obvious because the results were poor. So I think if you get a manager, and let's use Jack Wilshere as an example, who walks in the dressing room, they obviously all like him. I think that's pretty fair to say. Who's not going to like Jack Wilshere? He's a great guy. He's one of the best players England have had in the last 30 years. He did it all at Arsenal. So he walks in the dressing room. people sit up and take notice. So I think that element is where you do have to look at the manager, Cillian, and say, look, come on, you need to organise these lads. These are good. These are international players. You know, you've got Big Shane playing for the Republic. You've got fantastic players there, just not delivering.
Do you think do you think that Johannes was a more a philosophical, ideological coach than a pragmatist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in his core, yes, but then you look at how it went the final 2 months, and suddenly they were playing three at the back, and they were going a little bit longer. You know, I felt it almost towards the end that he was a little bit guilty of trying to chase results. And again, whether this is because he was made aware that the expectations had changed, or whether there was an internal view that the expectations were changed, and suddenly it did become about trying to win games and trying to get in the top six. Whether it was because he's a coach that was feeling a little bit under pressure, and you begin trying to chase things. I'm not sure, but yeah, clearly at his core there was a very ideological way of playing football, and you could talk through it. From a goal kick, they'd go short, they'd try and build up in this sort of 3-5-2 or variations of, and try and break through teams, and often they were quite easy to play against in that regard. I've actually felt kind of watching the Premier League, and I watch Tottenham quite a lot just because they're on quite a lot, and I see a lot of similarities actually between maybe what Ange Postecoglou is doing there to maybe what Johannes Thorup was trying to do. Not in terms of style of play, because I think there are some very, very big differences, but just in terms of, you watch Spurs in possession, you watch them attack at times, and you go, oh wow, what a sequence, what a phase of play. But then they're so easy to counter against, to score against, as we saw on Sunday. And that was the case with Norwich. They did a lot of stuff really well under Johannes Thorup. And, you only have to look at the bursts of some of the results they had. But if I was an opposition team in need of a result and I saw Norwich City coming up on the fixture list, I'd be absolutely delighted. And that kind of, I think, maybe encapsulates where they were and speaks to some of the inconsistency that you guys were mentioning earlier. So, yeah, some of that was ideological, and you saw it on Saturday. They were a little bit more varied in their play and went a little bit longer and used Jack Stacey a bit more as an outlet. That was interesting. That was the change that Jack Wilshere turned to straight away, I think, even though by his own admission he kind of views football in the same way as Johannes Thorup. But yeah, I think the problem for me is if you believe, and again, AD's the best place to speak about this, but if I was a player and I was playing for a coach who saw the game a certain way and he was trying to drill it into us all the time, and then he pivoted away from it, I'd probably go, well, hang on, you don't really believe in this then. Why should I believe in it if you're going to change it and you don't believe in it? So whether there's an element of that, I'm not sure. It's usually, you ask the question, is it players or coach? Often it's probably both, and it's a mixture of everything that comes together. And sometimes it's luck as well that a manager needs, and just those fine margins don't fall. All of those things can come into it. But yeah, I think it's a good point. Was he too ideological? Maybe he was, and it would be interesting if he was in this call at the moment, if he could reflect on that and kind of give his view on it.
What was your sliding doors moment, Connor?
Derby, I think. Derby at home, where, I don't know, it's difficult because I'm conflicted, because I think if they'd have won that game, I think they could have gone on a little bit more of a run. That would have been after Watford, where they were on the cusp of the top six. I think if they'd have won that game, they would have been in the top six. And obviously that moment late on when Jack Stacey kicks Marcus Harness in the head and gives away the penalty, and it felt like it changed. But then part of me feels that probably what we saw from that group subsequently is maybe what we would have seen anyway, even if they'd have gone on to win that game, or even if they'd have gone on to win at Blackburn. So that probably for me is the biggest one I look at as the sliding doors moment, because I think if they'd have seen that game out, it could have been very different.
Yeah,
definitely. A quick intro to Jody the roadie that's just joined the pod. He's joining us for the second part of this podcast this evening. Hi, Jody. How are you?
Sorry I'm a bit late. I'm in Germany at the minute. I had to download the app, and I'm parked up in a rest place somewhere, but I'm good to go now. I'm all good.
That's absolutely fine. You're actually 10 minutes early, so feel free to stay on. Feel free to stay on there and listen in. Reuben, I'm just going to chuck it across to you because I'm conscious you haven't had an opportunity to speak yet. So we're just going to talk about signings. So which signings worked and which ones perhaps didn't? And do you think the squad was ever truly balanced?
I think you look at it, in my opinion, I think Marcondes has to be the standout signing. Brought in as an emergency cover when we had the injuries back in early autumn. And he's always impressed me. Even when he's not been as consistent on the pitch as others, he's always shown that fight, shown that commitment. And I think for a free signing, when I saw the news today that his year extension was activated, I thought it was a no-brainer. I think he's just what we need, especially in this period of time where we don't really know whether we should be pushing for the playoffs or solidifying to just stay in the Championship. In terms of signs that I think haven't worked out, I mean, I feel quite a lot for Jurisic. Brought in January, There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and I've only seen him play at Hull, and he really impressed me when he was on the pitch at Hull. And then ever since then, there's been injuries. I remember when Johannes said in a press conference about how he was still quite tired after moving to the UK. And I'm thinking, it's a young lad here. There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He was quite an expensive January signing too. We haven't really seen much of him, but I think if the conditioning goes well over the summer, I think we could have a really good player in our hands. But I think overall, there's just sometimes you can see on the pitch, Johannes always put the mindset of a clear philosophy, a clear style of play. And I can't remember off the top of my head a time that I've seen the same starting lineup or the same style of football played each time. And I just think it's been one of them seasons where it's been a bit of a roller coaster. There's been some amazing moments, and then the last few months have been terrible, brutally honest. Yeah.
We had this conversation on the bus the other day, didn't we, on the way to the women's game against QPR. I think I don't even feel like it's been a rollercoaster season. I feel like it's just been flat pretty much since the start of the year. And like you just said, Reuben, like the lineups change week in, week out. And I'm just like, I've got to a point where I don't even know what to kind of expect from the team sheet and what kind of result to expect. I mean, Cillian, pass this over to you because you've been week in and week out more or less every single game. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been massively unpredictable. That's the only thing that's been predictable. That would be unpredictable. And I'd love to see. I mean, I think there's been some good signings. I think Jacob Wright, especially in the last few weeks, has really shown the talent that he is. I think for me, disappointment-wise, I'm a little bit disappointed with Callum Doyle. I think he's been up and down. I think he's been a very good centre-back at times, but then left-back, I don't think he's really excelled there. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on him. But I suppose he came with a big reputation as a championship player. But Jacob Wright, to me, is definitely impressed. Hopefully, I'd like to see him and been announced as a permanent signing.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair shout, Cillian. Rob, welcome back.
Sorry, sorry guys. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in Spruce. There must be some sort of blackout.
No, it's absolutely fine. So we were just talking about the signings, really, and I'll repeat the question for yourself. Which signings do you think have worked? Which ones perhaps haven't? And do you think the squad was ever truly balanced?
Which ones have worked and which ones haven't? Cillian was I only caught the end of that, but, Callum Doyle, I think, is a good player. He's going to be destined for big things. Has he done well for Norwich? Yeah, he's done okay. But, I mean, you could say that none of the players have really delivered at all this season. I like him in Icondes. I do think that was a good signing. As we record this, the news came today that they've kind of extended that deal, which was expected. I think obviously he's a great lad. Not that matters as long as he can play on the pitch, but I think that does help. He's a good lad off the pitch, but he's a good footballer. He's a good option. Jose Cordoba, I think he's kind of drifted down with the team, really. I saw a couple of games early on as a fan, just coming because I wasn't involved in Radio North at the start of the season, and I really liked him. I thought this looks the business. Really great defender. Got a bit of a trick in him. Happy to play with the ball at his feet. But he's just kind of regressed a little bit. But possibly a new manager might be able to bring more out of him. Lewis Dobbin looked promising. Really like the look of him, and hopefully that one can be revisited. And clearly Jacob Wright is probably the best of the bunch. I mean, it's a no-brainer signing a Pep Guardiola midfielder. You're going to get something decent there. Classy little player. Was really good at Middlesbrough, and the signs are that they will be able to sign him as well. So there's definite silver linings. Again, I mean, I hate to say it again, but I said it earlier. Ben Napper, the jury's out on his signings as well. Really, he's not covered himself in glory, and I think probably the Sydney Van Hooijdonk one would be the one that we really look at and think, Christ, what was that all about? I didn't understand that. I mean. We spoke to Coote about him a lot on Radio North, and Coote was an amazing number 9, for younger listeners, and he knew what he was doing in front of goal. And I think Coote was talking about the fact that that the runs just weren't there, that he wasn't getting into the right spaces. He didn't seem to sort of anticipate where to go for the finishing. And this isn't a let's get on the Sydney Van Hooijdonk podcast, but that's just an example of someone that Ben Napper signed to sort of be the backup, I guess, to Josh and what have you. So that worried me a bit, but it's just a case of getting it right, isn't it? And that's always the big thing for sporting directors.
No, absolutely. I know you're pressed for time, Rob. So perhaps just before we let you go, we'll start with Connor. Connor, what was your best game and perhaps your worst moment and individual standout performance?
I think best one. You'd be hard pressed to find a better one than Coventry. this season. I had a quite unique view inside Carrow Road in that I was sat next to a Coventry supporter when those two goals went in my colleague Paddy Davitt. So that was quite an interesting experience. He kind of had two waves in that. I think first and foremost it was damn it, Coventry have lost, and second it was he had to do a rewrite, which in this game is never good fun when you have to do those on the final whistle. I know I can hear the world's smallest violin from you guys, but yeah, that's probably the best moment of the season. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anything other than that. Shout out probably maybe for Derby away, which I really enjoyed early on in the season, and I think all of it, if any of you guys were there and certainly coming away from it, you could sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, if this clicks, it could be really exciting. We saw that in cases as well. Obviously, you got a few big home wins in there. Worst is a good question because there's been a few.
Has to be at home.
Yeah, that was Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah, that's a great shout. I think you'd be hard pressed to beat that one, given the circumstances of how that defeat unfolded. Obviously, with the position that they were in at half time, that should never have ended 3-2, and clearly it did. And maybe in a sort of way that encapsulates the whole thing. In terms of best individual performance, that's a good question. Probably a Sargent one, isn't it? Because I think for me, in terms of quality, is
not a Saints one.
The best striker in the championship, in my view.
Not a Saints one.
No, I don't think so. No, I think even in like the Derby game where he scored a hat trick, I think he owed a lot of that to Sargent and a lot of the work. I mean, Sargent was absolutely tireless that day and didn't score a goal. That maybe encapsulates, kind of the season that he's had. But yeah, I'm maybe struggling for an individual game for him. But I think across the piece, I'd probably say Josh Sargent as an individual. So yeah, those are my picks. But I think AD summed up. That's probably used the word that I would use to describe the season, which is disappointment.
Yeah. Morgan, anything else from yourself before we let the gents go?
It's a real pleasure to meet Rob and Connor virtually, of course, because I hear Rob every day on Radio Norfolk. And Connor, it's been a pleasure as well. I wasn't I didn't co-host then when you interviewed, when Jez interviewed you before. So, it's been a real pleasure.
Smith's t-shirt, Morgan, because I'm a Smiths fan, so let's see the Smiths t-shirt. Yeah, good lad, Meet His Murder. Yeah, great album. Yeah, we've got to hold up the greatest band of the 80s.
Yeah.
Just before we let you go, guys, Morgan does the random question of the week, so I think you've got to do one, Morgan. That's why the guys have come on. Come on.
I actually didn't think about. Okay, all right. Random question of the week. So Rob and Connor. This is completely off the back, so I didn't think about this at all. Both you guys are together in Megazone near the old hospital.
Morgan, Megazone, or is it Laser Quest now?
Laser.
Have you done your research?
Laser Quest.
Yeah, Laser Quest. I think you'll find. Yeah, Megazone. You go back a bit there.
I didn't know what Megazone was, so I'm glad you clarified.
That's what we used to do in the 90s.
I've been to West, so yeah.
So if you've got there's Connor and Rob together in the team, you've got one more person to add to your Laser Quest team out of both of your respective journalistic people. Who is it and why?
Anyone we work with, or just at our organisation?
You know the ones we mean, the usual suspects. Chris Gorham, Paddy David, Seamus, Samuel Seaman.
Sam Seaman. I don't know if I'd have Sam. He's quite peace-loving, isn't he? I'd want someone who's got a bit of an edge. Well, Connor knows it better than me. I reckon I'd have Chris Lakey, Connor's boss. Because Lakey, he's a wily old soldier. He's been round the block. He's from the Fens. Peterborough basically.
He can handle himself.
Yeah. So he's from Wisbeach, isn't he? Proper Fens. Yeah. So they don't mess about there. He's just experienced. He's just like an old soldier. He'd be able to, any time you need someone in the trenches, you go with Lakers, I think. So I'd go the wonderful, great man who I've been at many boxing shows with over the years, and we've sat watching the Walsh brothers and that. So he knows the fight game. I'll go with Lakey.
Connor?
That is a very good shout. Yeah. Do you know what? The first one that came into my head actually was Chris Gorham. Just because I think he'd be really good at kind of calming you down and walking you through the situation and being quite logical about it. And he's funny enough, I get a quite unique. Obviously, Rob knows this as well. But when we finish games, you go down pitch side, or you go into the mix zone, speak to a player, and there's sort of 5-10 minutes before they come out, and it's always really good to speak to Chris because I think you get a nice sort of balanced perspective of what you've just seen, and you often come away and go, yeah, he was right about that.
Wouldn't, but Chris, I know Chris well. He's one of my closest friends. He would not shoot people. He would try and reason with them. He would just literally be like,
And he would as well.
But I tell you what, have you looked at it this way? Because he's very good as a BBC presenter at being balanced and trying to bring in the other.
Yeah.
Let's lay our guns down. I'll make a nice cup of tea, and maybe that's what you want, Connor. Maybe you're a peace and love.
I'm a lover, not a fighter. So me and Chris will work nicely.
I didn't expect this reaction, to be fair, Jez.
Rob, the statistics he'd have on the opposing team would be phenomenal as well.
With some stat, and he'd go, "This guy has shot 50 times, and he's only hit the target once," and he'd be like, "Pick him off." So he would smash it. I think that's a great team. I think if it was me, Connor, the two Chris's, Lakey and Gorham, you'd be laughing. The one person you wouldn't want is Chris Reeve, because he would just be singing and calling an El Hernandez selfie. I mean, I went out with dinner for him last night for our end of season, and he's just constantly filming me eating. He's put it up on it. I'm like, what are you doing? He's nuts. You should get him on this podcast. I'm sure he'd come on. And how proper podcast he's done.
Yeah, Jez has asked, but he's been snubbed.
He is going to come on. He's going to come on next season. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him. So as you say, he's a really nice chap. Jez, thank you so much from the team here at Beyond the Barclay for everything you do for Norwich City, covering them up and down the country. It's much appreciated by me as a fan, and I know it is by the guys that live locally as well. So thank you both, and thanks for coming on as well. And we hope you have a really nice summer.
Jez, just wanted to say, well done to you, and obviously Morgan now, and obviously Coote's involved. You know, you've done a brilliant job. I remember when we first did an interview and you were just kind of doing it on your own back, and you've really come on to amazing things with the help of Cillian and obviously Reuben as well. It's incredible, you know, what you've done. You've really kind of moved on to bigger things. You get great guests on. Cillian, I honestly love Cillian's road diaries. I think they're sensational. I watch them every week. I think they're brilliant. You know, and he's a top man. I always have a little chat with him when I see him at games. And I just think you've done a brilliant job, mate. So credit to you, pal. You've done really well.
Thanks, Rob. No, it means a lot from you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, echo that completely, and I like the vlogs as well. I like waking up on a match day and watching them. Usually, it's it's good. So, but no, agreed. I mean, this is it's fantastic. Sort of following what you guys have done throughout the season, and maybe shining a light on individual stories or different stories, maybe that haven't got that recognition that they should get. It's brilliant what you're doing. It's a great service for Norwich fans. So definitely keep it
up. Honestly, me and Gorham love them. Cillian's facts of the week about the opposition, just brilliant.
Little plug, Rob. There's some good ones.
Mate, I'll keep tuning in. I will be there, Cillian, with you.
Well, thanks, guys. And as I say, have a really good summer, and we'll speak to you both soon.
Cheers, gents. All the best.
Bye, gents.
Later.
Bye-bye. Big thank you to Rob and Connor from BBC Radio Norfolk and the Pinkun, respectively. We are now joined with two of our amazing fans that one lives halfway around the world, so the other one travels halfway around the world every other week, it seems. So delighted to welcome Nick Dye and Jody, the roadie. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming on.
That's good. Yeah.
If you'd just like to perhaps just reintroduce yourself. I know you've both been on before, but just reintroduce yourselves. Give the guys that are on here a little bit of a synopsis about what you do. So we'll start with Nick.
Sure. So I'm a Norwich fan living in San Francisco, California. Originally from Norwich. I moved out to America in 2007, and I've been working as a professional coach, a technical director for an academy, and I run my own soccer coaching company as well.
Fantastic. Jody?
I'm Jody. I'm a roadie. I'm a truck driver. I'm currently on tour with Usher. We're about 2 hours west of Berlin at the minute. We've just finished a week in Amsterdam, and as you said, Jez, I do a lot of travelling. I went the equivalent of 2 around the world last year, but I'm parked up for the
Excellent. So we had the sentence to sum up the season earlier on, and AD gave us one word. He must have preempted my next question. So Nick, if we start with you, if you could just give us your sort of one word assumption, one word description of the season, please. And why?
One word: disappointing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what AD said as well. And perhaps you'd like to sort of give your reasons why, and it probably won't be too much different, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of my love of watching Norwich, waking up at 4 a.m. takes a bit of a stretch sometimes, but usually I can't wait to hear that alarm. Can't wait to hear the team news. And towards the end of this season, it's kind of felt. I haven't felt the same way. It's kind of, we've all kind of seen where it's headed. I think one of the things, usually with a manager and a project, and I can really get behind that. We've kind of had an embarrassment of riches with projects that have gone well in the short space of time, and this one just hasn't, and it felt like it's just gone in the wrong direction. I don't know whether it was just Johannes being a little green and not seeing through the project fully, or feeling like he needed to get results, or felt that he was vulnerable with the group, or whatever it was. We've just fallen away from the project, and I think that's where Ben Napper needed to step in. One of the great analogies I think for it is, if you told a surgeon to stop surgery midway through, it'd be called murder. But in this case, it feels like the surgeon had tailed away from the procedure or the game plan, and someone's needed to step in and save the patient.
I think the thing for me, Nick, I completely agree, by the way. I just think there was a lack of communication. So when the results started to go wrong, not that they needed to do this, but I would have expected maybe Ben Napper to come out and say, look, guys, we appreciate the results aren't great. We've had a long list of injuries. We've had suspensions. We've had things that are going to curtail. We've got a young, inexperienced manager who's trying to learn his trade. And I just kind of felt that at that point, it might have been quite good for Napper just to come out and say, look, we're still with the project. We're going to go into we're going to go into the end of the season and pre-season with releasing some players that perhaps don't fit that project. We're going to bring some in that will fit that. But it just never felt like that communication piece was going to come out. So maybe sort of, I don't know, in any sort of job you get appraisals, don't you? Maybe sort of for sitting in his appraisal. I don't know. Would that be a fair assessment, AD?
Yeah, I do. I still feel like if we're looking from the outside of another club and we're looking at kind of their performance over a season, we look at kind of how their results have gone and how they've developed, we seem to be more accepting that this is the right thing to happen. Whether I agree with him leaving or not leaving, like, there's no doubt the recent results that he had,
he needed to go, didn't he?
We're really falling away. And so I think once they've kind of made that decision, and even if it's not a 100% decision, but once they're kind of 50-50 even over the manager and whether he's going to be the right man, I think they need to act then. Because then it just gives you the maximum time to kind of think about kind of where we go from where we're at. If, like I said, if we'd have stuck with him, and again, I'm not saying either is right or wrong, but from my eyes, had we stuck with him and we'd have given him the summer and we'd have, offloaded some players, brought some players in, what do we do in October or November when that's potentially not working?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we then give him to the end of the season? Because then we've just written off a whole season. Do we then bring somebody in October, November time? Well, if we do, we might as well bring them in May and give them the whole summer to work with the players and put that squad together. And I'm not saying that they're going to make an appointment soon, because I've had no noise from the club as around candidates and stuff like that. There's still one game of the season to go, which, to be honest, I just can't wait to go so we can just close the season and then begin to look forward on what next season might look like. Because it's going to be a big summer on the pitch, off the pitch. Napper's under pressure. Like, he's going to be really scrutinised on his next appointment, and it's not just the next manager's neck potentially that might be on the line with it. So he's going to want to make sure that he picks the right person, because it's in his best interest as much as it is the club's best interest, is what I believe. I like the idea that they've given some time to think. Now, if they go ahead and appoint Jack Wilshere on a permanent basis because he gets a win at Cardiff, that whole idea of, getting him out early so they've got time over the summer to think about just gets kind of forgotten about. Sacking him early then seems a bit more pointless. And I'm not saying Wilshere shouldn't be appointed. I'm just saying, and it's probably the same with any manager, there's an element of risk. Of
course there is. Yeah.
It's a gamble. Jack Wilshere would be a gamble. Wagner was a gamble. Gamble. Daniel Barker was a gamble. So, some of them have worked out in our favour, some of them not so much.
I would counter that, AD, though, that although you say, Hoff was a gamble, I agree with you. Farke, you mentioned, was a gamble. But Webber had experience as a championship from working with Huddersfield before he put in place Daniel Farke. Whereas I would argue that that Napper has gone from an Arsenal youth academy boss to a big club in the Championship as the sporting director. I think that's quite a substantial leap from him. Webber and Farke, I think there was more tangibility with that appointment, whereas with Napper and Hoff, it was very much a case of suck it and see. That's my feeling on it. let's not beat around the bush about this. My feeling right now is next season, I'm concerned. I said this to Reuben on the bus that they're fast 8. It's not so fast.
Yeah, not very fast at all.
No, that like the next appointment has to be right. Otherwise, I don't want to be scaremongering, but we're going to be staring down the barrel of being the wrong side of mid-table.
The championship is going to be horrific. It's going to be horrific. Look at the teams that have come down. Look at the teams that have come up. It's the hardest division in the world.
Morgan, if you were in Napper's shoes, would you take Wilshere, who he knows really well, or would you take a gamble on somebody he doesn't know?
Why did you have to answer that question, Cillian? That's really hard question.
You look like you might want to answer it.
Can I finish it? Can I?
Yeah, let's chuck it across to the right.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna call you because you've been silent all night, Jez. You've just been asking the questions and not giving your opinion.
No, I mean, I think it will go in one of two ways. Yes, he knows him from Arsenal. That's why he's at the club. He's been brought in to learn his trade with a experienced manager, someone that's done it basically, and Glenn Riddlesham that's got bags of experience in the Danish game. But I don't think that the plan was to give him the job 6 months later. It was probably the plan to give him the job when Thorup was headhunted by another club.
Yeah.
So for me, he's not. I'm not saying he's not ready because that's unfair. He's more ready than I am. Let's put it, or any of us, perhaps. But he's quite clearly he was a very talented player. He was an excellent under-18s coach at Arsenal and did some really good work with that team. You're talking the likes of Lewis Skelly and Namwieri, if I've pronounced his name right, that have come out of his team. Lewis Skelly will probably go on to be one of our best ever left backs, and that's a big statement. But he probably will. And when I say ours, I mean England's. So yeah, this is a very long answer, but no, I don't think he's probably there yet. So I think we do need to go out and get another manager with the view to keep Wilshere there as the number 2.
Yeah, but will he? But the question then is, will Wilshere be happy with that? And I'll throw that over to Nick. Nick,
he's on mute.
Yeah, I was actually fortunate. I'm actually doing an MBA, a sporting director MBA right now, and I was fortunate enough to meet Ben Napper at Fulham recently, where there was a conference. And extremely impressive. I was actually paired up with him for one of the things that we're working on, and just so impressive the way he thinks, critical thinking, understanding, very, very calm demeanour. I think if he puts his eggs in the Jack Wilshere basket, I think we should trust him. He's clearly handpicked him out of Arsenal. Probably wasn't easy to get him out of Arsenal. Just relocating someone who's a Londoner into Norwich. Yes, giving him the chance, but it wasn't even assistant. It was first team coach. But clearly that was with an eye of, listen, we've got someone talented here. We've got someone who connects. Also, I bet that the core values within the club, and I think that's when you come into these decisions, it's, as fans, we see it as like a candy shop and all these different managers and all these different things. Or what do we want? Or do we want the Daniel Farke type? Or do we want Russell Martin? Or Alan Kirbishley's still available? Maybe he'd be so. We have all these visions and dreams of where we're going to be. But the reality is that Ben Napper's going to already be compromised by the values of the club. And are those values higher from within? And if they are, was that told to Jack Wilshere when he got brought on? So are you willing to throw that out of the window now and bring someone else in that's new? And also, if you're Jack Wilshere, and you're told, you know what, you need another year, when he's been given this opportunity, and yes, it's come quickly.
Yeah,
that was always possible. And in Jack Wilshere's mind, it was always possible. The tenure of a manager is not normal to be more than a year. So he's probably been thinking, yeah, this is my chance. This is where I get it. So for me, if I'm Jack Wilshere and someone else comes in, then I'm gone. That's how I would see it. And I'm not sure if Ben Napper really believes in him, then I think he'll give him the job.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Sorry, AD, after you, please.
No, I was just going to say, sort of turn that round into looking at it from a sort of football player's perspective. So just to give it a little bit of a twist, I'm a 17-year-old centre forward coming through the ranks, been doing well for the youth team, the main number 9 striker for the first team, gets injured, is out for the season, and it's, do you throw me in as this 17-year-old that you've invested all the time and money in since I was 12 years old, or do you go out and buy another striker? And so there's no right or wrong to it, but again, it's just the kind of what you're left with after, what it leaves that 17-year-old kid thinking. And obviously Jack Wilshere is bigger and older than a 17-year-old kid, but it's that same sort of understanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's, I don't envy his job, but I do agree completely with what Nick says. I think, once he's made that decision, you're going to know that it's going to come from a place that he genuinely believes is in the best interest of the club and will make the club more successful. So you then have to put your trust in that.
One thing
Jody,
with
from a fan's perspective, where's your head at right now?
Sorry, say that again.
So from a fan's perspective, where's your head at right now? Who would you like to see?
Morgan, me and you think very similar. It's the Carlos Queiroz, the Arsenal assistant manager. Oh, that's not his name, but I would have liked him last time his name was being touted, but I don't think we've got a chance of getting him. I think the money's too much. I think he's got too much on his plate right now to be dropping down to us, but I would have liked to have seen him. But I don't know if any of you have seen, but Gary O'Neill has just become the short odds manager as the Norwich one ahead of Wilshere. I can't remember on what bet site, but O'Neill is the favourite.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a good job at Bournemouth and Wolves, hasn't he? I mean, and
Jez, Reuben, what do you reckon?
Well,
sorry, Morgan.
I think one thing with the manager situation is you have to look at the club's vision. Because, like I said to you, Morgan, on the bus heading down to the women's game on Sunday, do we want to stick with the mindset that we should be pushing for the playoffs consistently? At which point, I think you look for someone like Gary O'Neill. I mean, I might be the only one thinking this, but maybe even Sean Dyche, someone that can consistently, they know how to get a team out of the Championship. Or do we realise that we're at a point where we need to just focus on rebuilding, make sure we can stay in the Championship, and then go from there maybe 2-3 years' time? At which point, I think maybe you stick with Wilshere and you give him the chance to develop. Because I remember after Johannes got sacked, I remember seeing something that said it was almost like a way that Johannes was going to nurture up Wilshere for Wilshere to eventually take over. And I think if we now decide to get rid of Wilshere, what vision do we have for the future?
Yeah.
And it's one of those where the club really needs to have a look and think, what are the short-term aims, rather than think for the long-term, getting back to the Premier League and staying established. Because in looking at the long-term future, we're compromising our short-term. And, we're one wrong managerial appointment away from getting dragged into the Championship relegation battle. And without, going too far, doom-scrolling-wise, if we're not careful, we could end up doing a Birmingham or a Blackburn and spend a year in the third. And at that point, you completely compromise every plan you have for your long-term future. So I think it's, it wouldn't surprise me if we decide to sign a big-name ex-footballer because they have a big name from their playing career, and then they turn out not to be as good a manager, and then we end up worse off than we have been this season.
That's what that's what I'm concerned about. That's really like the elephant in the room for me right now. Is like I said to you on the bus, like we really need to get someone that's gonna stabilize next season. I don't give it if we finish 10th. Like I just want to make sure that we're not facing the relegation fight, because right now, after the last 5 months that we've had,
you're right, and to do that, Morgan, of course, we're going to have to recruit in the playing staff. Cillian, I'm going to cut that across to you. Where do you think we need to strengthen, and have you got any sort of players in mind as well that you'd like to see brought to the club?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Obviously, we need to look at the goalkeeping situation, and they're going. I think Ray has got a good future, but I don't think he's ready, and I don't think Long is the answer based on what we've seen of him. So we do need a goalkeeper, and I'm not sure where we're going to get one from, because I mean, I think if you look at Trafford for Burnley as an example, I mean, to me, it showed the impact of having a strong goalkeeper, and he obviously made the team of the season for the EFL. He made the Burnley defence look incredibly solid. Yeah, I mean, they're a decent, well-drilled team, but there's no superstars in their defensive lineup. And I think it shows the power of a great goalkeeper. And I do think Gunn hasn't been at the top of his game all season, but I did think he played really well against Middlesbrough.
Did, yeah.
And it showed then the rest of the team that the confidence was really there. So that to me is probably the key position. If Sarge goes, we obviously need to figure out how we're going to solve our striker situation. I'm not convinced he will go.
I don't think he will.
No, but I'd like, as Rob said earlier, I'd love to see Lewis Dobbin I think he did well for the period of time he was there. I do think we need to sort out our injury situation. There has to be something. And I think you previously, AD, mentioned this around, how the training is done on the pitches or whatever, but there's something that's not right there for so many young players in particular to be breaking down like they seem to be.
Yeah, no, definitely. Same question to Nick then. Is there anywhere else that Cillian hasn't mentioned where you think we need to strengthen?
So age profile springs to mind for me, because when Webber was really under pressure to get us up, he extended the age profile. He brought in experience, because the average age of a promoted team is around 27, 28. And he felt like, listen, this is how we go about it. We've now had that, got the worst of it. Now Napa's come in with a remit of, okay, we've got to lower the age profile. We've got to try and get some assets in on long contracts, which he's done. Some 4-year, some 5-year deals for some young players. So now for me, it's about being really, really shrewd in the transfer market and finding those mid-range 27, 28-year-olds who are still hungry, who still want the experience, who still want to taste the Premier League, who can support this group and carry them. And whether that's leadership-based or whether that's just performance-based, but the impact we've had over the years of bringing in players like a Darren Huckabee, or I'm sure there's many others when you bring in at that age profile, who can be a catalyst, who can then start up the younger players and get us moving forward. So whether it's a goalkeeper, a centre-back, a centre-forward, whether we need to replace here and there, I'm not sure. I think it's going to, for Napa, it's going to come down to the best offers he gets. I mean, clearly he's under pressure to sell signs because he's not going to sign a new year deal and he's on 1 year. Sargent has longer. We could still sell him next year and he's still under contract for another year. So there is, I agree, I think there's more of a chance of keeping him. So yeah, I would say keep an eye on shrewd business and age profile. That's what I would like to see us go, whether we will or not, or whether we'll go for more assets again. And also a lot of it depends on the ownership, because we're talking here as fans, but what do the Atanasios want to see? Are they getting behind hey, we're going to pull in a Russell Martin and we're going to pull out all the stops to get him, but we need promotion this year? Or let's get behind Jack Wilshere, get a couple more assets, start to build up slowly. And it's kind of another transition, but we're starting to see the blueprints of that transition play out. We're starting to see a little bit more of the plan unfold. Is that enough for fans? That's it's going to be interesting.
No, definitely. Just before we finish, Jody, what's your prediction for next season? And, take that question as you will.
It all hinges on who we get in. All hinges on the man that we get in. As Nick mentioned just now, it comes down to leadership. If you can get the right man in, I think, Morgan, you said last time, if you can get the right manager in who can dust off the players that have been treading water, you've such a new signings. There's realised life in the team. Get the right man in. And this maybe it is Jack Wilshere. They played all right for him recently, didn't they? They seemed to play okay for him. I didn't see the game. I was working. From what I could tell, he seemed to be playing again. Maybe he is. If not, Gary. If not, we've got to get the right guy. It's time to try any new guy. I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm such a tizzy over this season. As AD said, the word for him was disappointment. Mine was descending. Ever since that Sheffield Wednesday game, it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. Get the right.
But Jody, that's exactly my point a second ago. I genuinely do not feel, if it's going to be Jack, I'll get behind Jack, because he knows, he's been around the club, he knows the players, he's got respect, he knows what he wants to do. If we're not going to go with him, then we need to get a steady hand, because right now, like, you don't do that. Like, we can't go down the path of another Hoff, like another, like, bit of a roll of the dice, and an ideological philosopher. That's great, but right now we need someone who's going to be able to, who knows the team, or who's going to be able to provide some kind of stability.
Okay, look, guys, we've come to sort of a bit of a natural end there. But before we go, I just want everyone to kind of have a sentence each, and what are you doing for the summer? So, what are your plans? You got any holidays? One player that you want Norwich to sign, and where do you think we're going to finish next season? So we'll start with Reuben, actually.
He's been really. We need to pull out all the stops and try and get Johansson if Stoke go down. If they stay up, he'll cost us more money, but I think he's too good for a team that's facing relegation, and he would be solid at the back for us. This summer, I honestly have no idea at the moment. I'm currently awaiting a response from a unnamed Premier League club about maybe an internship with them for the summer. But at the moment,
Brilliant.
I'm just basically going to be
Good luck, mate.
chilling
Good
out,
luck.
take a bit of break from uni, and then go from there. Cheers, thank you.
Filming
And,
for us.
Yeah, all from here. And I think for next season, I think we'll finish 9th. I think we'll be pushing for the playoffs. I don't think we'll be good enough to get into them. And, it'll be an improvement from this year, but, it's going to take time for us to be pushing for the playoffs, pushing for automatics. So
I think I could argue that there's 15 better teams.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Wrexham do, is the big standout for me. I think, I said at the start of this season, League One, I've always thought is, the big turning point. If League One, you can get stuck in there for a long time, and then Wrexham have completely walked the league, second place finish, coming straight up. I think with how competitive the Championship's going to be next year, do I think they're going to be as competitive? Maybe. Depends on how much money, the Hollywood owners invest. But I don't think Phil Parkinson's a Championship manager. But then again, they've given him that time. They've built a squad around him, and it's working perfectly for Wrexham. So if their fairy tale continues, it'd be brilliant for them. But I don't think they'll be as much of a threat as people are concerned about. I'm not saying they're not going to be fighting for playoffs at all. I think we'll probably finish around them. I think they might top us and finish 8th, but I don't think it's going to be as easy for Wrexham.
Thank you. And thanks once again for your help on Sunday. It meant a lot. So,
no worries.
Appreciate that. Cillian, same questions to you, please, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm obviously excited about the game on Saturday to try and finish out a season, hopefully with a win, and take part in the international parade. And very excited to meet my hero,
Good luck
on Sunday. After that, no holidays planned. I've been travelling obviously a lot this year, so maybe a little bit of a break from travel would be nice. And in terms of next season, I just hope we finish ahead of Ipswich. That would be my dream season.
100%.
Where that is, 21st, they're 22nd, or we're first and they're second, it doesn't really matter, but as long as we're ahead of them.
No, brilliant. It feels like I'm going to thank everyone after their answers, but thank you for your hard work and dedication here as well, Cillian, and all the videos you do for us. It's always much appreciated.
It's been a pleasure.
Big fans.
Lovely.
AD?
Over the summer, so it's going to be quite a busy time for me and my wife. We're currently going through the application to become foster carers.
Congratulations.
Which is a really intense and quite long process. We'll probably come to a conclusion around about September, October time. But obviously between now and then there's lots and lots of stuff that we need to do. Player-wise, I picked, I guess, my highlight in anticipation of you going to ask me what my highlights of the seasons were. So thinking back on it, it was any time that Lewis Dobbin was on the ball. He had this thing about him. Whenever he got the ball, I was just expectant and something was going to happen. He was exciting. So I hope he's the one we were able to bring back in and be involved. Yeah, and in August we're off to Disney World for a couple of weeks.
Oh, lovely.
So looking forward to that. Yeah,
Florida or the Paris?
Yeah, Florida.
No,
yeah.
I was going to say you're the other side, Nick, aren't you? I think where you're based in USA.
Disneyland for us, Los Angeles.
Disneyland, yeah, that's it.
And AD, again, thank you so much for your involvement. Having an ex-players, active might be the wrong word to use, but just thank you for everything you do for us. And that Twitter video was fantastic, by the way. I think it's still getting views even now. The behind the scenes regular Norfolk Day, it was really good. To be fair, it gave me and Morgan sort of a directions for when we were there on Sunday. I don't think I'd have known where to go if it wasn't for that video. So
it's just up like that is some climb, but it's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Obviously, love meeting you guys and being involved.
Likewise. Thank you.
Just forgot to mention as well, prediction for the season. Cillian stole my answer as well. Is I don't care so long as it's above Ipswich.
Yeah, no, definitely. Jody, across to you. Your final thoughts.
I'd like there must be a keeper like Tim Kroll or somebody out there floating around that we can get. As for who's the young I think there's a League One forward called Wilkinson who's been banging goals in. I think we were connected with him for a little while. Is it Wilkinson? I'll have to chase that up. But could be, yeah, that could be it. But maybe somebody like that, a young lad, going to give Sargent a little hand might help. My summer, I'm going to be touring with the Pet Shop Boys. Well, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be festivals in Italy. I've always been.
No, that's excellent. Brilliant. Thanks, Jody. Nick?
Yeah, I would go for someone like Elias Chair. I would dig into the division and look at some of the more struggling teams that don't look like they're going to get near playoffs. George Saville's another one at Millwall. I'd like to see some of those push the bar. I know Elias Chair just signed a new deal in January, so it might be difficult, but that's where I'd be looking if I was sporting director. For the summer, I'll be back in Europe. So my wife is French, and so we'll go to spend some time in France. I've got tickets to see Oasis at Wembley. So looking forward to that as well. That's going to be amazing.
Can we get?
So I'll be taking my 10-year-old. He's over the moon about that.
Oh, amazing.
That's one of our jobs, Nick. I might be there. I think there's one of our jobs.
No way. All right, so sneak me backstage with you, Jody, please.
No problem.
Jody, can you get any tickets?
Yeah,
I bet.
I mean, to rub salt on the wound for the tickets question real quick, I mean, I've seen them twice. I got very lucky with pre-sale, so...
Oh, well done.
Yeah, so can't wait.
Well, that's good. I'd be really enjoy it, Reuben. I'm saying that through gritted teeth.
Sorry?
That's it, yeah. Morgan.
He was eating tickets.
Morgan, over to you. I've just got to go and let Fiona in.
Yeah,
She's knocking on the door. Hang on.
What is
Are you
this?
knocking on the door? No, I thought Fiona was knocking on the door, but she's not.
This is my
I'm back.
co-host.
Morgan, same question to you, Morgan.
What were the questions again?
Summer plans, player you want, and position you think will finish next season.
Summer plans. They're not. It's a very. So my friend's getting married. Ben, the videographer who does our video work, who works with Reuben, he's getting married in the summer. So I'm his best man at his stag next month. I've got a plan for him. I can't tell everyone here because obviously it'll spoil the surprise, but it involves football. So that and trying to have a holiday, hopefully. Player that I hope will sign, Jacob Wright, on a perm. I generally like interviews with that guy. He just seems really, really switched on, really mature, a DM or ball-playing DM that we've needed for so long. And where we'll finish? Mid-table.
Yeah, no, I agree. Morgan, and also thank you for all your hard work as well and dedication. It means a lot.
You ring me every day.
Keep on trucking.
Almost all day, every day.
Right, before we go then, Turkey, Dobbin, 9th, and that's me signing off. Thanks, gents, and thanks everyone for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. I look forward to speaking to everyone today. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Cillian, do it. Thanks.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barclay. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like us to cover, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the ball, City.